Is he my son? The question didn't echo. It detonated. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Meridian Hotel glittered like frozen lightning above them, but in that moment, the entire ballroom seemed to collapse into a single unbearable point of silence. Vivian Mercer forgot how to breathe. Dominic Ashford's hands tightened around the armrests of his wheelchair. Not in weakness, in restraint. Between them stood a 6-year-old boy with dark curls and bright, fearless eyes. Mommy. Miles looked up, confused by the sudden stillness. Why does the robot man look like he's about to cry? Have you ever told yourself a story so many times that it became your truth? Have you ever protected your heart so fiercely that you ended up building a prison around it? And what happens when a child innocently unlocks the door? Tonight, at Manhattan's most prestigious charity gala, 2 powerful adults were about to confront a secret that had been growing for 6 years. And the only person who didn't know the truth was the one who mattered most. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. If you discovered your child's other parent had chosen career over family, would you tell them about the pregnancy? Or would you walk away and never look back? Comment, tell, or walk away below. I read every comment. Now let me take you back 6 hours earlier. Vivian stood in front of her bedroom mirror in her Brooklyn apartment, staring at the woman she had trained herself to become. Emerald silk gown, minimalist diamond earrings, the heirloom brooch from her grandmother pinned carefully at her collarbone. Polished, poised, untouchable, but beneath the calm exterior, her heart had been racing since morning. You look like a princess, Mommy. She turned. Miles stood in the doorway wearing a miniature navy suit that was slightly too big at the shoulders. His bow tie was crooked. His socks didn't match. Her chest tightened, because when he smiled, she saw Dominic. Not just resemblance, reflection. And you, she said softly, kneeling to fix his tie, look like the most handsome gentleman in New York City. Will there be robots there? She smiled faintly. It's a charity gala, sweetheart. So boring. Despite her nerves, she laughed. Miles was obsessed with robotics. Artificial intelligence, engineering videos. He spent hours watching innovation documentaries on her tablet, carefully selected documentaries, because over the years she had shown him videos of one specific innovator. Dominic Ashford, not as his father, but as the robot man who helps sick kids. She told herself it was harmless. She told herself it was enough. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Naomi Chen swept into the apartment like she owned it. Burgundy gown flowing, pixie cut sharp as ever. Okay, Naomi said, assessing them both. Power duo confirmed. The gala won't know what hit it. Vivian forced a smile. The Humanitarian Artist Award. 10 years of illustrating children's books for pediatric hospitals. Books born from heartbreak. Books born from nights she painted instead of crying. Books born from building a world where children were never abandoned. What she never admitted, even to Naomi, was that every story she wrote about brave little heroes overcoming impossible odds was her rewriting her own. And Dominic's. The Grand Meridian ballroom shimmered with wealth, old money, new tech empires, philanthropists, investors, and somewhere among them, whether she knew it yet or not, sat the man who had once asked her to choose between love and ambition. The Ashford Foundation was the primary sponsor of the event. Naomi had mentioned it casually. Dominic probably won't attend. He's become reclusive since the accident. The accident. 3 years ago, a helicopter malfunctioned over the Pacific. 2 fatalities. 1 billionaire survivor, paralyzed from the waist down. Vivian had read the article at 2:17 a.m. She told herself she felt nothing. She had been lying. Back in the present, inside the ballroom, Miles slipped away. It took less than 60 seconds. One distracted conversation about her creative inspiration. One handshake too many. And he was gone. Miles? Her pulse spiked. Naomi scanned the room. Relax. He's probably near something shiny. Shiny. Vivian's stomach dropped, because across the ballroom, near the tall windows overlooking Central Park, sat a man alone in a wheelchair, and walking toward him was her son. No, she whispered. Her heels clicked too loudly against marble as she pushed through silk gowns and tailored tuxedos. Excuse me. Pardon me. Sorry. Too late. You're the robot man. Miles's voice rang proudly across the ballroom. Conversations paused. Dominic Ashford turned. Time split open. 7 years vanished. There were more lines on his face now. Silver threaded his dark hair. His shoulders looked broader, heavier. But his eyes, those same intense dark eyes that once memorized her like a blueprint, they found hers. Recognition struck. Then confusion. Then something deeper. Miles continued excitedly, oblivious to history detonating around him. Mommy says you invent machines that fix sick kids. That's so cool. Did you build one to fix your legs too? Or are you still testing it? A few guests gasped quietly. Vivian finally reached them. Miles, sweetheart, don't bother. Dominic's voice cut through. Vivian. It was lower now, rougher, and somehow more dangerous. He looked at Miles, then back at her. Is he? His jaw tightened. My son. The ballroom didn't breathe. Have you ever felt your past and your present collide so violently that your future shattered in the process? Vivian's mind raced. She had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways over 6 years. None of them looked like this. None of them involved a wheelchair. None of them involved her son discovering his father before she could control the narrative. He has my eyes, Dominic said quietly. There was no accusation in his tone yet. Just devastation. Vivian couldn't lie. Not with Miles standing between them. Not with those eyes watching her. Not here, she whispered. Whispers were already spreading. Phones subtly angled. Powerful people smelled scandal the way sharks smelled blood. Naomi appeared instantly. Miles, she said brightly. I just discovered there's a robot demonstration downstairs. Miles gasped. Real robots? Dominic swallowed something painful and forced a small smile. I'll be here when you get back, he told the boy gently. I promise. Real promise? Real promise. Miles studied him seriously, then nodded. Naomi led him away. And for the first time in 6 years, Vivian and Dominic stood face to face without a child between them. He wheeled himself toward the terrace doors without asking. She followed, because some confrontations cannot be postponed. Cold November air wrapped around them as the terrace doors shut. The city lights glittered below like indifferent stars. Dominic positioned himself near the balustrade. When he turned back to her, the restraint was gone. He's 6, he said. Not a question, a calculation. You were pregnant when I left for Singapore. Vivian's throat tightened. I didn't know until after you left. And you never thought to tell me? I tried. His eyes flashed. When? 3 weeks after I found out. I called your office, repeatedly. Your assistant told me you were unreachable. His brow furrowed. What assistant? British, efficient, dismissive. Dominic's face darkened. Margaret. Something flickered behind his eyes. Rage. Understanding. And after that, he demanded, you didn't call back. I never received the messages. Silence. The kind that changes everything. You chose Singapore, she whispered. I chose a merger that would fund pediatric robotics for the next 20 years. He shot back. I asked you to come with me. My mother was dying, and I offered to relocate her. She didn't want to leave, and you didn't want to compromise. And neither did you. The years between them erupted. Pain long buried clawed to the surface. And then he said it. If I had known you were pregnant, I would have stayed. The certainty in his voice cracked something inside her. You loved your empire, she said weakly. I loved you. The words hung in the cold air. Heavy, unprotected, raw. Before we go further, if this story is already pulling at your heart, tap the like button. Stories like this deserve to reach the people who need them most. Because we're just getting started. Dominic's hands trembled slightly against the armrests. I lost you, he said more quietly. Then I lost my ability to walk, and now you're telling me I lost 6 years with my son. Vivian's defenses began to crumble. I thought I was protecting him, she admitted. From what? From disappointment. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You didn't protect him. His eyes lifted to meet hers. You protected yourself. The truth stung because it was accurate. And inside the ballroom, their son was learning how robots repaired broken things. Neither of them yet understood that tonight they would have to learn the same lesson. The terrace door had barely stopped vibrating from the wind when the first crack in Vivian's certainty widened. You protected yourself. Dominic didn't raise his voice when he said it. He didn't need to, because some truths don't require volume. They require courage, and she hated that he had just shown more of it than she had. Inside, the orchestra resumed playing as if nothing monumental had just occurred. Wealth has a way of ignoring emotional earthquakes. But on that terrace, two people were standing in the ruins of a version of history they had both believed. "You don't get to rewrite this as if I'm the villain," Vivian said finally, her voice steadier now. "You left. I left for 18 months. You left when I begged you to stay. I asked you to come, and I asked you to choose me. I thought building something lasting was choosing you." His voice cracked, not in anger this time, but frustration. "I thought securing our future was the responsible thing." Vivian's breath caught, because once upon a time, she might have believed that too, until Singapore turned into silence, until silence turned into divorce papers, until pride turned into permanence. Dominic's gaze drifted past her, over the park, toward the skyline he once conquered. "You want to know what happened after I left?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. He continued anyway. The humidity had been suffocating. The pressure worse. Ashford Industries was weeks away from closing the Zhang acquisition, a deal that would unlock access to Asia's largest pediatric surgical networks. Dominic hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night for months. But the exhaustion wasn't what haunted him. It was the last conversation with Vivian. 18 months, he had said over the phone. "That's all I'm asking." "My mother is in chemotherapy," she had replied. "She's not leaving New York. Then I'll fly back every 2 weeks. You already cancel half your trips." The silence between them had thickened. "Vivian," he had said finally, his voice softer. "This deal changes everything. We could fund children's hospitals globally, robotics, early cancer diagnostics, prosthetics. This isn't about money anymore. It's never not about money with you." That sentence had lodged somewhere deep in his ribs. He hung up that night believing she would calm down. She hung up believing he had chosen ambition over her. Neither of them called back, and Margaret Thornton, polished, sharp, fiercely loyal to the brand, ensured it stayed that way. When Vivian called weeks later, Margaret screened it. "She's emotional," Margaret had told him vaguely. "It's best not to engage right now while you're closing the deal." When letters arrived, Margaret redirected them. When emails came through, Margaret archived them, all under the guise of protecting operational focus. By the time Dominic discovered discrepancies 18 months later, the damage was irreversible. He fired Margaret immediately, but by then, divorce papers had been finalized. Vivian had disappeared from his life, and he believed she had chosen to. Back on the terrace, Dominic exhaled slowly. "I found out about Margaret's interference after the merger closed. I thought she had filtered minor distractions. I didn't know she filtered you." Vivian's pulse faltered. "I called 14 times, she whispered. "I know." Her head snapped up. "You what?" "I subpoenaed archived call logs when I started auditing communications. I saw your number." His jaw tightened. 14 times. The number hit her harder than if he had shouted. 14 attempts. 14 moments of hope. 14 rejections she thought came from him. "I left one voicemail," she said quietly. "The day I found out I was pregnant." Dominic's hands froze. What did it say? Her eyes glossed over, remembering. I said I didn't know how to tell you this over the phone. That we needed to talk. That it wasn't just about us anymore." His throat worked. "I never heard it." The weight of stolen years settled between them like snowfall. Cold, silent, suffocating. "And the accident?" she asked softly, shifting ground. Dominic's eyes darkened. That was a different kind of silence, one that carried trauma. "We were flying back from Tokyo," he said, "inspecting prototype robotics for spinal repair." The irony was brutal. The weather shifted unexpectedly. Mechanical failure. The pilot tried to stabilize. He paused. There was no dramatic movie moment, no time slowed down, just impact. Vivian felt the air leave her lungs. "I woke up in a hospital in Honolulu," he continued. 2 broken vertebrae, spinal cord damage. They told me I might never walk again. She had read headlines. She had not heard this. For the first year, I thought it was punishment. For what? For building machines to fix people, and being unable to fix myself. A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. For losing you. For choosing wrong. Vivian swallowed. You don't think that anymore? I think tragedy doesn't negotiate morality, he said. But it forces clarity. And what did it clarify? That success without connection is hollow. His gaze locked onto hers. And that I lost the only person who ever challenged me to be more than my empire. Before she could respond, the terrace door opened again. Miles burst out, chocolate smudged across his mouth, eyes blazing with excitement. Mommy, Daddy! The robot picked up a grape without squishing it. Daddy. The word landed differently this time. Less shocking, more undeniable. Dominic blinked rapidly. Once, then twice. And you know what? Miles continued, climbing carefully onto the side of the wheelchair as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They said the robots help fix spines sometimes, so maybe they can fix yours. The innocence, the hope. Dominic's composure fractured. Maybe, he managed gently. Technology improves every year. Miles studied him seriously. Were you sad when your legs stopped working? Children ask questions adults avoid. Dominic inhaled slowly. Yes, he answered honestly. I was. Did someone help you not be sad anymore? He glanced at Vivian. Not at first. Miles nodded thoughtfully. When I get sad, Mommy draws with me. Or we build things. You could build things with us. The simplicity of the offer nearly broke him. I'd like that, Dominic said softly. Miles beamed. Then, as only a child can, he delivered the question that cut deepest. Why weren't you at my birthday? The world tilted. Vivian's heart pounded so loudly she was certain they could hear it. Dominic's fingers tightened against the armrest. Buddy, Vivian began carefully. But Dominic lifted a hand. No, he said gently. He deserves the truth. Miles waited, because children feel when something matters. I didn't know about you, Dominic said quietly. Until tonight. Miles blinked. You didn't? No. Mommy didn't tell you? The air sharpened. Vivian crouched so she was eye level with her son. Sweetheart, she said carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes when they're hurt, like when I threw my shoe at Noah because he took my crayon. Yes, she managed a small smile. Like that, Miles processed this. So, you were both mad? Dominic nodded. For a long time, Miles considered that, then shrugged. Okay, just like that, because children forgive faster than adults. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Inside the ballroom, a ripple of attention was growing. Phones were out. Photos were being taken. 2 of Manhattan's most talked about names. 1 child, 1 wheelchair, 1 scandal waiting to trend. Naomi stepped onto the terrace again, this time without brightness. Vivian, she said quietly, showing her phone. A headline draft was already circulating on social media. Ashford's secret love child. Vivian's stomach dropped. Dominic's jaw hardened. They're moving fast, Naomi said. Someone recorded part of your argument. Miles looked between them. Are we in trouble? Dominic's voice shifted. Calm, decisive. No, he said firmly. We're not. He turned to Naomi. Call my communications team. Vivian stared at him. What are you doing? What I should have done 6 years ago, he replied. Within 15 minutes, the Ashford Foundation's official account posted a statement. No spin, no denial, no deflection. Tonight I discovered I have a 6-year-old son. I was unaware of his existence due to personal miscommunication years ago. I am honored and grateful to begin knowing him now. My priority moving forward is fatherhood. Dominic Ashford. The ballroom erupted. Phones buzzed. News alerts triggered. Stocks trembled. And Dominic Ashford, tech billionaire, innovation mogul, global strategist, chose his son publicly. Vivian stared at him. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, he said quietly. I did. For the first time that night, she saw not the man who left, not the empire builder, not the paralyzed billionaire, but a father. If you're still watching, it means this story means something to you. Tap like so it reaches someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose differently. Because this is only the beginning. On that terrace, under Manhattan lights, a broken story had shifted direction. But healing requires more than public declarations. It requires difficult conversations. It requires humility. It requires confronting the real villain in the room. And she wasn't standing on the terrace. She was watching from somewhere else. Margaret Thornton had just seen the headlines, and she knew her name might surface next. The internet moves faster than forgiveness. By the time Vivian, Miles, Dominic, and Naomi re-entered the ballroom, the story had already fractured into 1,000 versions of itself. Some called it scandal, some called it betrayal, some called it romantic destiny. None of them knew the truth. Miles tugged on Vivian's hand. "Why is everyone looking at us?" "Because," Naomi muttered under her breath, scanning the room. "Your dad just broke the internet." Dominic remained composed, but his shoulders were tense. Years of navigating hostile boardrooms had prepared him for public scrutiny. This was different. This wasn't about stock value. This was about a 6-year-old boy who deserved protection. Camera flashes began popping near the entrance. "They're not supposed to be in here," Vivian whispered. "They won't stay out for long," Dominic replied calmly. "Which is why we're leaving. Now," his tone wasn't controlling. It was protective, and she wasn't used to that from him. Naomi handled logistics like a general. Within minutes, a private side entrance was cleared. Dominic's security team materialized, discreet but firm. Miles waved enthusiastically at the flashing lights outside. "Are we famous now?" Dominic leaned closer to him. "You were always famous to me." Vivian's breath caught. They reached the waiting car. This time, there was no emotional distance between them, just urgency. Once inside, the doors shut out the chaos. Silence filled the vehicle. Miles yawned. "Can Daddy come to our house?" Vivian and Dominic locked eyes. "Tonight?" she asked gently. Miles nodded sleepily. "So he doesn't disappear again." The words were soft, but they sliced clean through both adults. Dominic swallowed. "I won't disappear," he said quietly. Miles studied him, searching for certainty. Satisfied, he leaned against Vivian's shoulder and fell asleep within minutes. Children trust faster than adults, but they also remember longer. Vivian's apartment was warm, lived in, colorful. Nothing like Dominic's sterile penthouse lifestyle. Children's drawings covered one wall. Toy robotics kits occupied the coffee table. A half-finished illustration rested near the couch. Dominic wheeled slowly through the space, absorbing details. "You kept all of this running on your own," he said quietly. "Yes." No resentment in her voice, just fact. Naomi placed tea on the table and looked between them. "I'll take Miles to bed," she said gently. Vivian nodded. Dominic watched as Vivian carried their son down the hallway. His son. He repeated the word internally, like he was learning a new language. When she returned, the apartment felt smaller, quieter, more honest. They sat across from each other. No terrace wind, no audience, no chandeliers, just truth. "You went public without asking me," Vivian said finally. Dominic didn't flinch. "Yes." "Why?" "Because hiding him for another second would have repeated our mistake." She studied him. "And because you were afraid I'd hesitate?" "Yes." Honesty again. Infuriating. Disarming. "You could have destroyed my privacy," she continued. "I protected his identity," Dominic said. "No name, no photos. And I'll litigate aggressively against any outlet that crosses that line. You're used to controlling narratives. I'm learning not to control people." That landed. She folded her hands in her lap. "What happens now?" The question was heavier than anything said tonight. Dominic leaned back slightly. "I want to be involved. School, doctor appointments, birthdays, everything. And if I say I need time, I'll take time. And if I say I don't trust you yet, I'll earn it." Her throat tightened. "You say that like it's simple." "It's not simple," he replied calmly. "But it's necessary." Silence stretched. Then she said the thing she had never admitted aloud. "I was terrified." His expression softened. "Of what?" "That you'd show up, bond with him, and then leave again." The vulnerability in her voice shifted the atmosphere entirely. "I survived losing you once," she continued. "I didn't think I could survive watching him lose you." Dominic inhaled slowly. "I was afraid too." She looked up. "Of what?" "That if I tried to reach out after the divorce, you'd confirm what I already believed." "Which was that I wasn't enough for you." The words were so raw that they stunned her. "You built an empire," she said softly, "and still lost you." That silenced her, because success doesn't prevent emotional insecurity, it just hides it better. Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His jaw tightened. It's her. Vivian didn't need clarification. Margaret. She's requesting a private meeting tomorrow. Claims she has documentation. Vivian felt something cold slide through her. What kind of documentation? Archived communications. A beat. She knows exposure could implicate her in deliberate interference. And she'll try to protect herself. Vivian's pulse quickened. Do you believe she intentionally kept us apart? Dominic's voice was steady. Yes. No hesitation. No assistant has the authority to decide which personal calls a CEO should receive unless explicitly instructed. And you didn't instruct her? No. Vivian leaned back, processing. If she admits it publicly, it changes everything, Dominic finished. Not just for reputation, for accountability, for closure. 3 hours later, just as Dominic prepared to leave, there was a knock. Not aggressive, not frantic, measured. Naomi opened the door. Margaret Thornton stood there. Perfectly tailored coat, impeccable posture, ice blue eyes. I assumed you'd be here, she said calmly, stepping inside without waiting for invitation. Dominic's expression hardened instantly. You have nerve. I have clarity, Margaret replied coolly. And documentation you both deserve to see. Vivian's heart pounded. Margaret removed a slim folder from her bag and placed it on the table. Inside were printed emails. Voicemails transcribed. Call logs. Highlighted. Vivian's voice trembled as she read. Advise Mr. Ashford that Ms. Mercer is calling repeatedly regarding personal matters. Recommend postponing response until after acquisition finalization. She looked up. You wrote this? Margaret didn't flinch. Yes. Why? Dominic demanded. Margaret's composure cracked slightly. Because you were days away from closing a $12 billion deal. Emotional distraction could have destabilized negotiations. She was not a distraction, Dominic said coldly. She was my fiancée. She was volatility, Margaret replied. And volatility costs billions. Vivian felt something ignite inside her. You decided my pregnancy was bad timing for his stock value? Margaret met her gaze. I decided Ashford Industries couldn't afford emotional compromise. Dominic's voice dropped dangerously low. You destroyed my family to protect a quarterly report. I protected the company you built. At the cost of my son. For the first time, Margaret looked uncertain. I didn't know about a child, she said sharply. But you knew she was desperate, Vivian countered. Margaret didn't deny it. Dominic closed the folder slowly. You will provide a written statement, he said evenly. Full admission, signed, and you will cooperate if legal proceedings require it. Margaret hesitated. You would expose this? Yes. She studied him carefully. You've changed. Yes. She nodded once. Then perhaps this was overdue. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, she said without turning. I believed I was protecting greatness. Dominic's reply was immediate. Greatness that costs love is failure. The door closed behind her. Silence filled the apartment. Vivian exhaled shakily. 6 years, she whispered. Dominic looked at her. I can't give them back. No. A long pause. But we can decide what the next 6 look like. He held her gaze. Not possessive. Not demanding. Hopeful. Careful. Before we continue, if you've ever realized that pride cost you something precious, comment humility below. Because sometimes the strongest thing we can do is admit we were wrong. Tonight, 2 people did exactly that. But redemption? Redemption is proven over time. And morning was coming. With school plays, with headlines, with co-parenting plans, with forgiveness that would not come easily, but might come honestly. Morning did not arrive gently. It arrived with headlines, phones vibrating, news anchors speculating, financial analysts debating whether fatherhood would soften Dominic Ashford's leadership edge. Vivian sat at her kitchen table staring at her screen while coffee went cold in her hands. Tech titan's secret son, Ashford heir revealed. From billionaire to dad overnight. They were talking about her child like he was an acquisition. Her stomach twisted. Across the room, Dominic was on a call, voice calm, controlled, strategic. Yes, Immediate injunction against unauthorized photos of the minor. No, do not monetize speculation. Yes, I'll handle the press personally. Handle the press personally. 6 years ago, he might have delegated it. Now, he was stepping into it. Naomi leaned against the counter, watching. He's not hiding, she murmured quietly to Vivian. I noticed, and that unsettled her more than it should have, because if he was truly changing, then she would have to confront the fact that she might have been wrong. By noon, Dominic stood behind a podium outside Ashford Foundation headquarters. No dramatic backdrop, no rehearsed branding slogans. Just him. And cameras. Vivian watched from her apartment, heart pounding. I will not answer questions about my son's identity, Dominic began firmly. He is a child, not a headline. The room quieted. I discovered his existence yesterday evening. Due to professional interference years ago, communication between myself and his mother was deliberately obstructed. A murmur rippled through reporters. He didn't say Margaret's name. Not yet. But let me be clear, he continued. Blame does not build families. Accountability does. Vivian felt her throat tighten. I failed to ensure personal boundaries between business and life. That failure cost me 6 years with my child. No deflection, no excuse, no ego. I intend to spend the rest of my life correcting that. The statement was not theatrical. It was steady, grounded, real. One reporter shouted, Are you pursuing custody? Dominic didn't hesitate. I am pursuing fatherhood, in whatever form best supports my son's well-being. Vivian exhaled slowly. He wasn't positioning himself as savior. He was positioning himself as partner. That mattered. Life doesn't pause for emotional earthquakes. At 3:15 p.m., PS 118 hosted its annual fall performance. Parents filled metal folding chairs in the auditorium. Vivian sat in the third row, left side. Out of habit, her eyes kept drifting toward the entrance. You don't get your hopes up, she told herself. Not yet. The lights dimmed. Children in cardboard costumes shuffled on stage. Miles, dressed as tree number 3, scanned the audience nervously. He spotted her immediately. Then his eyes kept searching. Vivian's heart began to sink until the back doors opened. Dominic Ashford entered quietly. No entourage, no media, just him, wheeling himself carefully down the side aisle. Parents whispered. Some recognized him. He ignored them. His focus was locked on the stage, locked on his son. He positioned himself near the back to avoid disruption. Miles saw him. Mid-sentence, the little boy froze. Then his face lit up so brightly it almost hurt to witness. He delivered his one line, loud, clear, triumphant. Even when the storm bends us, we stay rooted. The audience applauded politely. But Dominic clapped like his son had just won a Nobel Prize. Vivian felt tears slip down her cheeks. Because this was what she had feared. This, the way Miles's entire world expanded just because his father showed up. After the performance, Miles ran off stage and straight toward Dominic. You came. I told you I would. You didn't disappear. I won't. The promise hung in the air again. This time, heavier. This time, more sacred. Vivian approached slowly. You didn't have to come today, she said quietly. Yes, Dominic replied gently. I did. Their eyes met. No anger, no defensiveness, just shared awe at the small human between them. As parents began collecting children, one little boy approached Miles. Is that really your dad? He asked bluntly. Miles nodded proudly. Yeah, he builds robots. The other boy stared at the wheelchair. Why can't he walk? The question wasn't cruel, just curious. Miles glanced at Dominic. Dominic met his gaze calmly. Because sometimes bodies break, Dominic said simply. But minds don't. Miles nodded thoughtfully. My mom says broken things can be rebuilt better. Dominic looked at Vivian. She hadn't realized she had ever said that out loud. And yet, it was written into every book she illustrated. Miles grabbed both their hands instinctively. Are we going for ice cream? Dominic hesitated. He looked at Vivian. Permission. Partnership. She nodded once. Yes, she said softly. We're going for ice cream. They sat at a small shop 3 blocks from the school. No paparazzi. No flashing lights. Just sticky tables and loud children. Dominic watched Miles debate chocolate versus mint chip like it was a board-level negotiation. "You're smiling," Vivian observed quietly. "I've negotiated billion-dollar mergers," he replied softly. "This is more terrifying." She laughed, despite herself. The sound surprised them both, because it had been years since they laughed without bitterness attached. Miles returned triumphantly with a towering swirl. "Daddy, do robots ever get scared?" Dominic blinked. "No." "Good," Miles said seriously. "Because if you get scared again, I'll build you one." Vivian felt something in her chest loosen. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This wasn't about apologies. This was about presence. Dominic leaned slightly closer to her, while Miles focused on his melting masterpiece. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "About earning trust." She studied his face. "You don't look like the man who left for Singapore." "I'm not." "What changed?" He didn't answer immediately. "Then, when you lose the ability to walk, you reevaluate what actually moves you." That line stayed with her. Later, after Miles was asleep again, Dominic prepared to leave. But this time, neither of them wanted to rush the goodbye. "Do you regret not telling me?" he asked quietly. She considered the question honestly. "I regret why I didn't tell you." "And why was that?" "Because I wanted control." He waited. "I felt powerless when you left," she continued. "Powerless when my mother died. Powerless when I couldn't reach you. Keeping Miles to myself felt like the one thing no one could take." Dominic absorbed that without judgment. "I can't promise I'll never disappoint you again," he said softly. "But I can promise I won't disappear." Her eyes glistened. "That's what I'm afraid of." He nodded. "I know." A beat. Then something shifted. Not dramatic. Not explosive. But subtle. Healing is rarely loud. It's often quiet. Measured. Earned. Before we move forward, if you believe showing up matters more than perfection, comment "show up" below, because that's what fatherhood is. That's what love is. And Dominic Ashford had just begun learning both. But healing doesn't move in straight lines. And tomorrow, a medical update would shake everything again, because sometimes the body remembers what the heart is trying to rebuild. The call came at 5:12 a.m. Lena had not slept. She had spent the entire night in the leather armchair beside Sophia's hospital bed, watching the rise and fall of her daughter's chest, counting each breath as if it were fragile currency that might run out before dawn. The skyline outside the wide hospital window was still dark, Manhattan wrapped in a steel blue hush that felt suspended between fear and mourning. Her phone vibrated against her thigh. Private line. "Dr. Hargrove." Her stomach tightened before she answered. "Mrs. Vasquez." His voice was careful. Too careful. "Yes," she replied, already standing. "There's been a change in Sophia's labs." The words seemed harmless, clinical, measured, but Lena had learned that in hospitals, change rarely meant celebration. She stepped into the hallway, the door whispering shut behind her. "What kind of change?" A pause. "Her hemoglobin levels have dropped again, more rapidly than we expected." Lena closed her eyes. "No," she breathed. "That's not possible." The transfusion stabilized her. "It did," he said gently. "But her body is not responding the way we hoped." The corridor felt suddenly too bright. "What are you saying?" Her voice sharpened, controlled, but breaking at the edges. "I'm saying," he continued, "that we need to run additional tests. Immediately." Silence stretched between them. "And," she pressed, "and we may need another transfusion. Soon." Lena's grip tightened around the phone until her knuckles whitened. "Use my blood again." There was another pause. "We can't." The word echoed. "We tested compatibility again overnight. The match isn't as stable as we initially believed." Her heartbeat stuttered. "What does that mean?" "It means," Dr. Hargrove said slowly, "Sophia's markers are showing. Irregularities we don't see in standard inheritance patterns." The world stopped. Lena's mind moved quickly, too quickly. Inheritance patterns. Genetics. Bloodlines. Her throat went dry. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," he replied. "But we need to confirm her full genetic profile before proceeding. We should test both biological parents." The hallway seemed to tilt. Both biological parents. 8 years of silence. 8 years of certainty. 8 years of a truth buried under contracts, board meetings, and carefully constructed independence. Sophia stirred behind the door. Lena turned, pressing her palm flat against the cool glass. "You already tested me," she said quietly. "Yes." "And the results?" "Mrs. Vasquez." His voice lowered. "There are discrepancies." Her knees nearly gave way. Discrepancies. A word that could shatter empires. What kind of discrepancies? She whispered. "The type," he said carefully, "that require us to confirm paternity before moving forward." Her breath caught. Before moving forward, as if the past 8 years were simply paperwork, as if love could be reclassified by lab results. "No," Lena said firmly. "That's not necessary. It is if we want to save her." The sentence sliced through her resistance. Silence filled the space again. "Time matters," he added. Of course it did. Time always mattered. And for the first time in her meticulously controlled life, Lena felt it slipping through her fingers like sand. Ethan Cole was already awake when his phone rang. He hadn't slept either. The night had been spent replaying the look on Lena's face in the hospital corridor, the controlled panic, the iron walls cracking just enough to reveal fear. He answered on the second ring. "Yes." "Mr. Cole," Dr. Hargrove said, "we need you at the hospital." His chest tightened. "What happened?" "There's been a complication. We need to run additional tests." "What kind of tests?" A brief hesitation. "Genetic confirmation." Ethan sat upright. "Genetic confirmation of what?" "Of Sophia's paternity." The air left his lungs. For a long moment he said nothing. "Is she stable?" he finally asked. For now," he repeated quietly. He ended the call and stared at the skyline outside his penthouse window. 8 years ago, Lena had walked away without explanation. 8 years ago, he had believed it was pride. Ambition. Distance. He never imagined it might be something else. Something living. Something breathing. Something with his eyes. By 6 a.m., both of them were standing outside the genetics lab. They hadn't spoken since the previous night. The silence between them was no longer filled with old resentment. Now it held something heavier. Possibility. Dr. Hargrove approached with a folder in his hand. "We need both of you to consent to testing immediately." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Do it." All eyes turned to Lena. She stood very still. Her entire empire had been built on control, on anticipating risk before it materialized. But she had not anticipated this. Not this exact moment, because the truth had once been a choice. Now it was survival. She looked through the glass at Sophia's small body surrounded by machines. Her daughter. Her heart. Her greatest secret. "Fine," Lena said at last. The word sounded like surrender. The blood draw was quick, clinical, unceremonious. 2 vials, 2 histories. One truth waiting to be confirmed. Hours passed. Lena remained at Sophia's bedside. Ethan paced the hallway. Neither spoke. At 10:47 a.m., Dr. Hargrove returned. He did not knock. He entered slowly, and the expression on his face said everything. Lena stood first. "Well?" The doctor held the folder tightly. The results confirmed biological paternity with 99.98% certainty. The words landed like thunder. Ethan's world shifted. Sophia, his daughter, all the missed birthdays, all the empty spaces, all the years he didn't know. He looked at Lena, not with anger, not yet, with disbelief. "You didn't tell me," he said quietly. It wasn't an accusation. It was devastation. Lena swallowed hard. "I had my reasons." 8 years of reasons? Her composure cracked. "You left," she shot back. "You chose expansion over us. You chose your company over everything. That doesn't mean I wouldn't have chosen my child." The room felt smaller. "Stop," Dr. Hargrove interrupted firmly. "This isn't about the past. Sophia needs another transfusion within the next 12 hours. Mr. Cole, you are a rare and perfect match." The word perfect hung in the air. Perfect. For survival. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Take whatever you need." Lena turned toward him. Their eyes locked, not as former lovers, not as rivals, but as parents, united by something neither contract nor pride could undo. The transfusion began at 1:30 p.m. Ethan lay on one side of the room, Sophia on the other, a thin line connecting them, life moving from father to daughter. Lena stood between the beds, watching, remembering, regretting, and hoping. Sophia's fingers twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. "Mommy," she whispered weakly. Lena rushed forward. "I'm here." Sophia's eyes drifted toward Ethan. "Is that—" Lena's breath caught. Ethan lifted his head slightly. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm here too." Sophia studied him with sleepy curiosity. "Your eyes," she murmured. "They look like mine." Lena's heart broke and healed in the same second. "Yes," she whispered. "They do." The machines continued their steady rhythm, beeping, breathing, living. For the first time since the diagnosis, the tension in the room began to ease. But Dr. Hargrove remained serious. He approached Lena quietly. "There's something else," he said under his breath. Her stomach dropped again. What now? The irregular markers weren't only about compatibility. She stared at him. "There are signs of a deeper condition, one that may explain everything." The fragile peace in the room trembled. "What condition?" she asked. He hesitated. "We need further testing to confirm, but it may be genetic." Her pulse roared in her ears. Genetic, not random, not temporary, inherited. She looked at Ethan. He looked back at her. And for the first time, fear was something they shared equally. "Explain," Ethan said. Dr. Hargrove's expression hardened. "It's possible Sophia has a rare blood disorder." The room fell silent. "Treatable?" Lena demanded. "With early intervention, yes," he replied. "But it will require long-term management." Long-term. The word carried weight. Not just survival, responsibility, presence, commitment. Ethan met Lena's gaze again. No anger now. No blame. Only reality. "We'll handle it," he said. "We," the word lingered. Lena didn't correct him, because for the first time in 8 years, she wasn't sure she wanted to. Outside the hospital window, the sun had fully risen. Manhattan buzzed to life below, but inside that quiet room, a different kind of awakening had begun. Not just of a secret, not just of a father, but of a family. And yet, as the machines continued their steady rhythm, as Sophia's color slowly returned, as hope cautiously stepped back into the room, neither Lena nor Ethan knew that the diagnosis waiting in the next envelope would not only change Sophia's future, it would force them to confront a past neither of them remembered the same way. Because sometimes blood does more than connect. Sometimes it reveals. Continue. Because sometimes blood does more than connect. Sometimes it reveals. The envelope arrived just after dusk. The hospital lights had dimmed, casting the room in a muted amber glow meant to calm patients and families alike. Sophia was asleep again, her breathing steadier now, her small fingers curled loosely around the edge of her blanket. Ethan had insisted Lena eat something. She hadn't argued, not because she wasn't strong enough to refuse, but because for the first time, she didn't want to fight him on everything. Now they stood side by side as Dr. Hargrove entered. No preamble, no gentle transition, just the truth waiting in his hands. "We have the full panel results," he said quietly. Lena's spine straightened. Ethan's jaw tightened. "And?" Ethan asked. Dr. Hargrove opened the file. "Sophia has a rare inherited hematologic disorder. It explains the instability in her blood counts and the irregular genetic markers." Lena's throat felt dry. "Inherited from which parent?" The doctor hesitated, not because he didn't know, because he did. "It is autosomal dominant." Ethan frowned. Meaning only one parent needed to carry the gene. Silence. "Which one?" Lena asked. Dr. Hargrove looked directly at Ethan. "The mutation appears to originate from your line." The words didn't echo. They settled. Heavy. Ethan didn't flinch, but something inside him did. "That's not possible," he said automatically. "No one in my family has. Many carriers are asymptomatic," the doctor explained. "You may never have shown severe symptoms, but the markers are present in your genetic profile." Lena looked at Ethan, not with blame, not yet, but with realization. 8 years ago, when she had found out she was pregnant, she had done routine screenings. Basic panels, nothing alarming. Because Sophia hadn't shown signs then. Because sometimes genetics waits. Ethan ran a hand through his hair slowly. "So this is my fault?" "No," Dr. Hargrove said firmly. "It is not about fault. It's about management. With early monitoring and treatment, Sophia can live a full life. Lena stepped closer to Sophia's bed instinctively. What does treatment look like? She asked. Regular transfusions during crises, medication to stabilize her bone marrow function, possible gene-targeted therapy as she grows older. Long-term, structured, medicalized. Ethan stared at his daughter connected to machines because of something he didn't even know he carried. I should have known, he murmured. Lena looked at him sharply. You couldn't have. He laughed softly, humorless. I built a billion-dollar biotech investment portfolio and never once screened my own DNA. The irony cut deep. Lena folded her arms, not defensively, but protectively. This isn't about business strategy. It's about legacy, he shot back quietly. She held his gaze. Legacy is what you choose to build after you know the truth. The room fell silent. Dr. Hargrove cleared his throat gently. There's another matter we need to discuss. Both parents turned toward him again. The severity of Sophia's presentation is unusual. It suggests a trigger. Lena's pulse quickened. Trigger? Stress. Environmental factors. Possibly an immune response. Ethan's eyes narrowed. She was healthy until 3 weeks ago. Yes, Lena agreed. The symptoms were sudden. Dr. Hargrove nodded slowly, which means something activated the dormant mutation. Lena's mind began scanning recent events. The move. The press conference. The merger announcement. Sophia starting at a new school. The tabloids speculating about Lena and Ethan being seen together again. Stress. Her stomach dropped. She overheard something, Lena whispered. Ethan looked at her. What? She heard me arguing with legal counsel about you. His expression darkened. You were fighting custody? No, Lena snapped. I was fighting rumors. About what? About you reclaiming what you never knew you had. The words hung in the air. Ethan stepped back slightly. You think this is because of me? I think, Lena said carefully. Sophia is perceptive. She feels tension. She internalizes it. Dr. Hargrove raised a calming hand. Stress can exacerbate genetic conditions. That does not mean blame lies anywhere specific. It means stability matters. Stability. The word felt like instruction, like warning. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then she gets stability. Lena looked at him. You don't get to decide that alone. I'm not deciding alone. It was the first time he said it without challenge. Not alone. Later that night, after Sophia had been transferred to a specialized monitoring suite, Lena stood by the window again. Manhattan shimmered below, powerful, relentless. Ethan approached quietly. She asked about me, he said. Lena didn't turn. I know. She deserves the truth. Lena's reflection stared back at her in the glass. She deserves peace. And those aren't the same thing? Finally, she faced him. No. He studied her. You didn't tell me because of this, didn't you? She didn't answer immediately. When I found out I was pregnant, she began slowly. You had just signed the Singapore expansion deal. That was business. You were leaving for 2 years. I would have come back. Would you? Her voice cracked, just slightly. Or would you have asked me to follow you, to pause everything I was building? Ethan opened his mouth. Closed it. She continued. I had nothing when I started my company. Nothing. I wasn't going to risk depending on anyone again. You thought I'd leave. I thought you'd choose ambition. He gave a small, almost broken smile. I learned ambition from you. The truth of that stung. She looked down. I told myself I was protecting Sophia from instability. And now? She met his eyes. Now I'm not sure if I was protecting her or protecting myself. The honesty between them was raw, unpolished, dangerous. Ethan stepped closer, not touching her, just near enough to feel the shift in air. She needs both of us, he said quietly. Lena's defenses flickered. She needs calm. She needs truth. She's 8. She's stronger than you think. Lena almost smiled. She's stubborn, like her mother and her father. A fragile truce. But beneath it, something else stirred. Because if this disorder was inherited, if it had remained dormant for years, if stress had triggered it, then what would happen the next time life became complicated? And life with Lena and Ethan had never been simple. The next morning brought a new development. Sophia woke with clearer eyes, stronger voice, but new symptoms. Her hands trembled slightly. Her pulse spiked unpredictably. Dr. Hargrove reviewed the monitors with concern. This fluctuation isn't typical. Lena felt dread coil again. You said the transfusion would stabilize her. It should have. Ethan stepped forward. What aren't you telling us? The doctor hesitated. The genetic mutation explains most of her condition. But there's a secondary marker we didn't expect. Lena's heart pounded. Secondary? It suggests an additional variable in her DNA expression. Ethan frowned. What variable? Dr. Hargrove looked between them. One that doesn't match either of your primary profiles. Silence fell. Lena blinked. That's impossible. DNA doesn't misread, the doctor said carefully. There is a modification in her sequence that cannot be explained by natural inheritance alone. Ethan's voice lowered. Are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Dr. Hargrove interrupted gently, that we need to investigate whether there was any medical intervention during pregnancy. Lena's breath stopped. Medical intervention. 8 years ago. A private clinic. Routine screenings. And one optional enhancement package she had barely considered. Something marketed as preventative genetic optimization. Her pulse roared in her ears. Ethan noticed her silence immediately. Lena. She didn't look at him. Was there? He pressed. Her voice came out barely audible. There was a consultation. For what? They offered advanced prenatal correction therapy. They said it could eliminate potential mutations. The room spun. Dr. Hargrove's face hardened. Do you have documentation? Lena nodded faintly. It was experimental, she admitted. But they assured me it was safe. Ethan stared at her. You altered her DNA. I tried to protect her, she snapped, panic surfacing. I thought if there was any risk. You didn't tell me. You didn't know she existed. The words exploded between them. Machines beeped louder as Sophia stirred. Dr. Hargrove stepped in quickly. This is not the time. But it was. Because suddenly, this wasn't just inherited genetics. It wasn't just legacy. It was intervention, choice, control, and unintended consequence. Ethan looked at Lena as if seeing her for the first time. What exactly did they change? She swallowed hard. I don't know. And for the first time since this crisis began, Lena Vasquez, the woman who built an empire on certainty, had absolutely none. Continue. I don't know. The words did not sound like Lena Vasquez. They sounded small, uncertain, human. Ethan stared at her as if the ground beneath him had shifted again. You don't know, he repeated slowly. I was 26, she shot back, voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. I had just lost my mother. I had just found out I was pregnant. I was building a company from scratch and terrified of doing it alone. That doesn't explain rewriting our child's DNA. I didn't rewrite anything, she snapped. Then softer, they said it was preventative. Dr. Hargrove stepped forward, grounding the moment. Mrs. Vasquez, I need the name of the clinic. Lena hesitated, because saying it out loud would make it real. Helixara. The doctor's expression changed immediately. That facility was investigated 5 years ago. Ethan went still. For what? Unregulated gene-to-editing trials. The room seemed to contract. Lena's hands began to shake. They told me it was FDA monitored. It was not, Dr. Hargrove said carefully. They operated in legal gray zones using offshore approvals. Ethan's voice dropped, dangerously quiet. What exactly did you authorize? Lena's memory flickered back 8 years. A sterile consultation room. A woman in a white coat with a soft voice. Charts showing probability percentages. Given your partner's family history, the consultant had said. Ethan's family history. He had mentioned once that his grandfather died young from an unexplained blood condition. He had brushed it off. She hadn't. They offered CRISPR-based mutation suppression, Lena whispered. They said if there was any dormant genetic risk, they could silence it. Dr. Hargrove inhaled slowly. Silencing genes is not as precise as marketing brochures make it sound. Ethan's jaw tightened. So instead of preventing the mutation, it may have destabilized adjacent sequences, the doctor finished. The implications settled in. Lena had tried to erase risk. Instead, she may have activated something worse. Across the room, Sophia whimpered in her sleep. All 3 adults turned immediately, because no matter what had happened 8 years ago, this was about now. Dr. Hargrove moved to the monitors. Her vitals are fluctuating again. We need to transfer her to pediatric intensive care for closer observation. The words struck like ice. Lena stepped forward. No, she just stabilized. And she's destabilizing again, he replied gently. Ethan moved beside Lena, instinctively. Do whatever you need to do. The transfer happened quickly. Nurses entered with controlled urgency. Machines were disconnected, reconnected. Sophia stirred as they adjusted her bed. Mommy, I'm here, Lena said immediately, gripping her hand. Daddy. Ethan swallowed hard. I'm right here. Her eyes fluttered open. You're not fighting, are you? The question pierced through every layer of tension. Lena forced a soft smile. No, sweetheart. Ethan leaned closer. We're on the same team. Sophia seemed to consider that. Good, she whispered. Because teams win. Her eyes closed again as sedation eased her into sleep. Lena felt her composure fracture. 8 years of control, shattered by one hospital bed. 2 hours later, they sat in the PICU waiting room. No leather chairs, no skyline view, just vending machines and fluorescent lighting. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on knees. Why didn't you tell me about the clinic? He asked quietly. Lena stared at the tiled floor. Because if it worked, there was nothing to tell. And if it didn't? She met his eyes. Then it would have been my mistake to carry. His expression shifted. You don't get to carry this alone. I already have. Silence stretched between them. Then Ethan exhaled slowly. I should have stayed. The admission startled her. What? When you found out you were pregnant, I should have been someone you trusted enough to call. You didn't know. That's not the point. He looked older suddenly. Not in years. In weight. I built my life assuming I had time, he continued. Time to fix relationships. Time to revisit the past. Time to start a family someday. His gaze flicked toward the ICU doors. I didn't realize someday was already here. Lena felt something shift inside her. Something long buried. You would have asked me to come to Singapore, she said softly. Yes. You would have expected me to adjust my life around yours. He didn't deny it. I might have, and I couldn't risk disappearing into someone else's world. He studied her carefully. I never wanted you to disappear. You wanted me beside you, she corrected. That's different. He absorbed that. Maybe for the first time. Before he could respond, Dr. Hargrove returned. She's stable for now, he said. But the genetic modification complicates treatment. How? Lena asked. The altered sequences are interfering with how her body processes the transfused cells. Ethan frowned. So what do we do? The doctor hesitated. There is an experimental reversal therapy. Lena's stomach dropped. Another experiment? This one is regulated, he said firmly. It targets edited DNA and attempts to restore original sequencing. Ethan looked at Lena. This would undo what you authorized. Her breath caught. Undo. Reverse. Admit failure. What are the risks? She asked. High. The word hung in the air. Without intervention, Ethan pressed. Her episodes will likely increase in frequency and severity. Lena closed her eyes briefly. Every choice felt like walking through fire. 8 years ago, she chose control. Now she had to choose surrender. Will it cure her? She asked quietly. No, Dr. Hargrove replied, but it may stabilize her baseline. Baseline, not perfection, not immunity, just steadiness. Ethan stood. Do it. All eyes turned to Lena, because legally, the original consent had been hers alone. This time, she wasn't alone, but the weight still felt personal. She looked through the ICU window at her daughter, at the tiny chest rising and falling, at the little girl who believed teams win. Lena exhaled slowly. We do it. Preparations began immediately. Specialists were called in. Geneticists reviewed archived sequencing data from Helixara. Lena forwarded every document she had kept, contracts, digital reports, consent forms. Each file felt like evidence in a trial she never meant to stand in. As night fell again over Manhattan, Sophia was prepped for the procedure. Sedated, monitored, fragile. Lena stood on one side of the bed, Ethan on the other. Their hands rested on opposite rails, not touching, but closer than they had been in years. If this works, Ethan said quietly. "We don't hide anything from her, ever." Lena nodded. "No more secrets." He looked at her carefully. "No more decisions alone." She hesitated only a second. Agreed. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't romance. It was partnership forged in crisis. The surgical team entered. Masks, gloves, precision. As they wheeled Sophia toward the procedure room, Lena felt fear rise like a tidal wave. Ethan stepped closer instinctively. "She's strong," he murmured. "She shouldn't have to be." "No," he agreed softly. "But she is." The doors closed, and for the first time since this began, there was nothing to control, nothing to argue, nothing to strategize, just waiting. Minutes stretched into hours. Lena replayed the clinic consultation in her mind. The percentages, the promises, the illusion of certainty. Ethan stared at the blank wall across from him, thinking about legacy, about inheritance, about what children carry without asking. Finally, at 2:17 a.m., the doors opened. Dr. Hargrove removed his surgical cap, his expression unreadable. Lena stood so fast her chair tipped backward. "Tell me." A pause. Then, "The procedure was successful." The air left her lungs. "But," he continued carefully, "we won't know the full impact for 24 hours. Hope returned cautiously. Fragile, measured. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Can we see her?" "Yes." They entered the recovery room together. Sophia lay still, small, wrapped in wires and possibility. Lena brushed hair from her daughter's forehead. Ethan stood close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "She's going to ask questions," he said quietly. "She deserves answers," Lena replied. Their eyes met. Not adversaries, not strangers, but parents who had both tried to outsmart fate and learned the hard way that love isn't engineered, it's endured. But as Sophia's monitors beeped steadily in the dim room, neither of them noticed the nurse outside quietly reviewing Sophia's updated genetic chart, noticed the anomaly that still remained. A fragment of altered code that the reversal hadn't erased. A fragment that didn't belong to either parent and hadn't come from Helixara's documented edits. A fragment that suggested there was still something neither Lena nor Ethan knew, and it was buried deep in their daughter's blood. Continue. There was still something neither Lena nor Ethan knew, and it was buried deep in their daughter's blood. The nurse hesitated only a second before flagging the anomaly in the system. Within minutes, Sophia's updated genetic chart was transmitted to Dr. Hargrove's tablet. He had just stepped into his office to dictate post-procedure notes when the alert appeared. Unmapped sequence detected. Source unknown. His brow furrowed. That wasn't supposed to happen. The reversal therapy had successfully neutralized the edited suppression markers from Helixara. The destabilizing sequences were already showing signs of recalibration. But this fragment hadn't been part of the original flagged mutation, nor had it been part of the clinic's modification signature. It was separate, deliberate, structured, and recent. He stared at the timestamp comparison. The fragment showed signs of activation within the last 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The same window when Sophia's symptoms first escalated. His stomach tightened. Inside the recovery room, Lena sat beside the bed, exhaustion finally pulling at her edges. Ethan stood near the window, arms folded, watching the steady rise and fall of their daughter's chest. For the first time in days, the monitors were quiet, stable. Hope, though cautious, felt real. "You should rest," Ethan said gently. Lena didn't look away from Sophia. "I will when she's home. You can't protect her if you collapse." She gave a faint, tired smile. "I've been collapsing privately for years." He absorbed that. "You don't have to anymore." Before she could respond, there was a soft knock. Dr. Hargrove entered, and immediately, Lena sensed it. The shift. Doctors carry good news differently. This wasn't that. "What is it?" she asked. He closed the door behind him. "There's an additional genetic sequence present in Sophia's updated scan." Ethan straightened. "I thought you corrected the modification." "We corrected the documented modification," the doctor clarified. "This fragment was not part of Helixara's edit." Lena's pulse quickened. "That's impossible. It's not inherited from either of you." Silence. The words felt unreal. Ethan's voice lowered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Dr. Hargrove replied carefully, "that this sequence appears to have been introduced after birth." The room went still. Lena stared at him. Introduced how? There are only a few possibilities. He hesitated. Gene therapy, experimental treatment, or targeted exposure. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're suggesting someone altered our daughter's DNA without our consent?" "I'm suggesting," the doctor said evenly, "that this fragment is synthetic in structure. It does not resemble naturally occurring mutation." Lena's mind raced. "No," she whispered. "She's never had any procedures beyond routine care. Any research trials, vaccination studies, specialty pediatric programs? Nothing," Lena said firmly. Ethan's expression darkened. "She started having episodes 3 weeks ago." "Yes. And what else happened 3 weeks ago?" He pressed. Lena froze. The gala, the Ashford-Vasquez biotech partnership announcement, the press coverage, the public reunion speculation, and, her eyes widened slightly, the school health screening. Every year, P.S. 118 partnered with a private pediatric research foundation for advanced wellness evaluations. She had signed the consent form absent-mindedly. It had seemed routine. Vision, hearing, blood work. Her stomach dropped. "There was a screening," she said slowly. Ethan turned toward her. "What kind?" "Through a foundation, Pediatric Advancement Initiative." Dr. Hargrove's expression sharpened. "Name?" She swallowed. "Novagen Youth Research." The doctor went still. "That's not routine." Ethan's voice turned ice cold. "What is it?" "A biotech startup funded heavily in the last quarter," Dr. Hargrove replied. "They specialize in adaptive genetic response programming." The phrase felt clinical, but the implication was not. "Adaptive to what?" Lena demanded. "Environmental stress, cognitive performance, disease resistance." Ethan stared at the doctor. "Say it clearly." Dr. Hargrove did. "They experiment with children's DNA." The air left the room. Lena felt physically ill. "No," she whispered. "They can't just—" "Consent forms," the doctor said gently, "often include clauses for anonymous data enhancement." Her mind replayed the digital signature screen, the scrolling terms, the box she checked without reading every line. Because she was tired. Because she trusted institutions. Because she thought the real danger had been 8 years ago. Ethan's voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. "They used her." "We don't know that yet," Dr. Hargrove cautioned. But the evidence was leaning heavily in one direction. "When did Novagen receive Ashford venture backing?" the doctor asked carefully. Ethan froze. He didn't answer immediately. 2 months ago, he said finally. Lena turned toward him slowly. "You invested in them?" "It was a minority position," he said defensively. "AI-driven pediatric health modeling. That's what they pitched. You didn't vet their human trial protocols? They assured us everything was compliant." "Assured you?" Her voice cracked. "You built an empire on due diligence." His face hardened. "And you built yours on unilateral decisions." The old fault lines cracked open again. Dr. Hargrove stepped between them verbally. "This is not about blame. Right now, we need to confirm whether Novagen introduced the fragment." Ethan's mind was already racing. "If they did," he said quietly, "this becomes criminal." Lena looked at Sophia, at the tiny body that had endured inherited mutation, experimental prenatal editing, and now possibly unauthorized postnatal alteration. "She's not a prototype," Lena whispered. "She's our daughter." By morning, Ethan had mobilized his legal team. Quietly, discreetly. No press, no leaks. Novagen's internal compliance records were being requested under investment oversight rights. Meanwhile, Dr. Hargrove ran comparative sequencing against Novagen's published research markers. At 11:32 a.m., confirmation arrived. The fragment in Sophia's DNA matched Novagen's proprietary adaptive resilience sequence. Inserted via microvector injection, likely during routine blood sampling. Without explicit parental awareness, Lena felt the room tilt. "They experimented on her," she said faintly. Ethan's eyes darkened in a way she had never seen before. Not corporate anger, not ego, something primal, protective. "They will answer for this," he said. Dr. Hargrove remained calm. "The immediate concern is how the fragment interacts with her existing mutation. Can it be removed?" Lena asked. Possibly, he replied, but each intervention increases risk. Ethan looked at Sophia. What is the fragment doing? Enhancing stress response pathways, the doctor explained. It amplifies cellular adaptation under pressure. Lena frowned. That sounds beneficial. In theory, he said, but in a child with unstable hematologic genetics, amplified stress response can trigger systemic overload, which explained everything. The escalation, the sudden severity. Her body wasn't failing. It was overreacting, trying too hard to adapt, trying too hard to survive. Lena covered her mouth. All this because we both tried to outsmart nature. Ethan didn't argue. Because it was true. He had funded innovation without questioning ambition's edge. She had authorized edits without accepting uncertainty. And Sophia had paid the price. That evening, they stood together again at her bedside, not speaking, just watching. Ethan finally broke the silence. I'm pulling every cent from Nova General. That won't undo it, Lena said softly. No, he agreed, but it stops them. She glanced at him. This will be public. I know. Your board won't like it. They can replace me. She studied his face. You'd step down? If protecting her costs me position, then I was never worthy of it. The conviction in his voice wasn't performative. It was final. Lena felt something shift again. Not romantic, not yet, but foundational. Trust beginning to regrow in damaged soil. Sophia stirred slightly. Her eyes fluttered open. You're both here, she murmured. Yes, Lena whispered. We're not going anywhere, Ethan added. Sophia looked between them. Good, she said sleepily. Because I had a dream. Lena brushed her hair back. What about that I was made of stars? Ethan swallowed. And stars burn bright because they're strong. Lena's eyes filled. You are strong, she whispered. Sophia smiled faintly. Teams win, she repeated softly. Her eyes closed again. And this time, when silence settled over the room, it felt different. Not fragile, not panicked, resolute, because now the enemy wasn't hidden in the past. It wasn't buried in secrecy. It had a name, Novagen, and neither Lena nor Ethan intended to let their daughter become collateral damage in anyone's ambition again. But as legal motions began quietly behind the scenes, and as Novagen's executives started receiving unexpected audit notifications, neither Lena nor Ethan yet realized the company had anticipated backlash, and they had embedded fail-safes, because Sophia wasn't their only subject. She was simply the first to show visible symptoms. And somewhere in a secured server, a list of children's names was growing, including one that would make Lena's blood run cold when she finally saw it. Continue. Including one that would make Lena's blood run cold when she finally saw it. The file arrived encrypted. Ethan didn't route it through corporate servers. He had learned that lesson fast. Instead, it came directly to a secure tablet delivered by his private security chief late that night in the hospital lounge. Lena stood beside him as the screen unlocked. No press. Ethan had ordered hours earlier. No board discussion. No pre-brief. This was not a business problem. It was a parental one. The screen flickered to life. Novagen Pediatric Adaptive Cohort, internal. A spreadsheet. Dozens of names, ages, school affiliations, procedure dates, and one column labeled Stress Response Activation Index. Lena's hand slowly covered her mouth. There were at least 30 children listed. Some marked stable, some marked monitor, 3 marked escalated. Sophia's name sat near the top. Activation Index, 8.7. Status, escalated, hematologic complication. Ethan's jaw clenched. They tracked her. They modified her and tracked her, Lena corrected faintly. He scrolled further down, then stopped. His finger froze on the screen. Lena noticed immediately. What? He didn't answer. He just turned the tablet toward her. The name stared back at her in clean black text. Mateo Alvarez. Age, 9. School, PS 118. Status, monitor, neurological variability. Lena felt her knees weaken. Mateo, Sophia's best friend. The boy who shared his lunch with her when she forgot hers. The boy who held her hand during fire drills because loud alarms scared her. They didn't just target random children, Lena whispered. They targeted specific schools. Ethan's eyes darkened. Schools with high parental income brackets, high data value, low likelihood of public suspicion. Lena's breathing grew shallow. We signed the same form. Yes, and so did Mateo's mother. Ethan scrolled further. Every child on the list attended a school participating in Novagen's Advanced Pediatric Wellness Initiative. It wasn't random. It was systematic. They embedded themselves in education systems, Ethan said quietly. Lena looked at him. You funded them. His eyes met hers. Steady. I will dismantle them. She believed him. But dismantling wouldn't erase what had already been done. Inside Sophia's room, the monitors remained steady. The reversal therapy was holding, for now, but the Novagen fragment was still active. Dr. Hargrove had confirmed it would require a second, more targeted extraction, a delicate process that carried neurological risk. Why neurological? Lena had demanded earlier. Because Novagen's fragment integrates along stress-cognition pathways, he explained. It's not just cellular, it interfaces with neural response mapping. They rewired her? Ethan had asked, voice dangerously low. Enhanced, the doctor corrected clinically. From their perspective, Lena looked at the tablet again. Mateo, neurological variability. A cold realization settled in. This isn't just about resilience, she said slowly. Ethan glanced at her. It's about optimization. They're trying to engineer high-performance children. Ethan's expression hardened. Adaptive leaders, enhanced cognition under stress, biotech's next frontier. Children aren't frontiers, Lena whispered. No, he agreed. They're not. By morning, Novagen's CEO had requested an emergency call. Ethan took it privately in a hospital conference room. Lena insisted on being present. The screen connected. Dr. Victor Hale appeared, calm, composed, mid-40s, brilliant eyes. Ethan, Hale began smoothly. I was surprised by the data request. Ethan didn't waste time. You altered my daughter's DNA. Hale didn't blink. We enhanced adaptive potential within consent parameters. Lena leaned forward. Show me where in that consent form it states microvector genetic injection. Hale's smile thinned. Parents consented to advanced molecular wellness screening and adaptive health intervention. That's not the same thing, Lena snapped. It is legally defensible. Ethan's voice went cold. Legality and morality are not synonyms. Hale folded his hands. Your daughter's genetic instability would have manifested eventually. You don't know that, Lena shot back. Our intervention increased her resilience. She's in pediatric intensive care. A temporary complication due to pre-existing mutation. Ethan stood slowly. You knew about her mutation. Hale's pause was microscopic, but it existed. Our algorithms flagged potential instability. Lena felt sick. You targeted her. We selected candidates most likely to benefit. Benefit? Ethan's voice shook with restrained fury. She almost died. Hale's tone shifted slightly. Progress requires controlled risk. Lena's composure shattered. She is not a clinical milestone. Hale's gaze remained steady. She is the future. The call ended when Ethan cut the connection. Silence filled the conference room. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Lena said quietly, He believes that. Yes, Ethan replied, and that's what makes him dangerous. Back in Sophia's room, Mateo's mother, Camila Alvarez, arrived unexpectedly. Her face was pale. She held her phone tightly. You knew, she said immediately when she saw Lena. Lena stepped forward. I found out last night. Camila's eyes filled with tears. Mateo had a seizure this morning. The words struck like a physical blow. Dr. Hargrove, who had been reviewing Sophia's chart, turned sharply. When? An hour ago. They said abnormal neural firing patterns. Lena closed her eyes briefly. Novagen's list. Neurological variability. It was beginning. Camila's voice trembled. What did they do to our children? Lena didn't answer, because the truth was still unfolding. But she did take Camila's hands. We're going to stop them. Ethan stepped forward. And we're going to fix this. Camila looked between them. How? Ethan's eyes were steady. With exposure, Lena understood immediately. If Novagen believed legality shielded them, public scrutiny would not. But exposure would mean scandal, media, headlines, court battles, stock crashes, board revolts, and Sophia's private medical history broadcast across the world. Lena hesitated. Ethan saw it. You're thinking about her privacy. Yes, and I'm thinking about every other child on that list. Her silence stretched, because both were right. Finally, she nodded slowly. We control the narrative, she said. Ethan's expression shifted slightly, recognition of the strategist returning. Joint statement, she continued. Parents first, not investors. No theatrics, he agreed. Just facts and accountability. He looked at her. We do this together. This time, the word felt different. Stronger, intentional. Together. That night, as Sophia slept steadily for the first time since admission, Lena sat beside her and whispered softly, I'm sorry I tried to control everything. Ethan stood on the other side of the bed. I'm sorry I trusted ambition without boundaries. The monitors beeped gently, stable. But outside the hospital walls, a storm was forming. Because by morning, press outlets would receive documentation. Parents would begin comparing notes. Regulatory agencies would be forced to respond. And Novagen would realize they had experimented on the wrong child, not because of wealth, not because of power, but because Sophia had two parents willing to burn empires down to protect her. And as Lena brushed her daughter's hair back gently, she didn't yet know that Dr. Victor Hale had already initiated Phase 2, a remote activation protocol designed to prove that Novagen's adaptive coding could not simply be removed, designed to show investors the technology was self-sustaining, designed without regard for what it would do to the children carrying it. And at 3:07 a.m., as Manhattan slept, Sophia's heart monitor skipped. Continue. And at 3:07 a.m., as Manhattan slept, Sophia's heart monitor skipped. Once, a sharp, irregular spike that sliced through the steady rhythm of the room. Lena's eyes flew open instantly. She had been half asleep in the chair beside the bed, never fully surrendering to rest. The monitor skipped again. Ethan was on his feet before the third irregular beat. Nurses rushed in. What's happening? Lena demanded, already gripping Sophia's hand. Sophia's body stiffened slightly, her fingers curling inward. Her pulse spiked, then plummeted. Dr. Hargrove burst into the room within seconds. Cardiac arrhythmia, he said sharply. Get me neuro and hematology. Ethan's voice was ice. This is Nova General. No one answered, because it was too soon to confirm. But the timing was not subtle. The rhythm destabilized again. Not chaotic, not random. Patterned, intentional. Dr. Hargrove stared at the monitor. This isn't spontaneous. Lena's heart pounded in her ears. What do you mean? It's synchronized to neural spikes. As if on cue, Sophia's EEG began showing heightened activity. Her stress response pathways were firing, amplifying, overcorrecting. The fragment. Ethan stepped back slightly, fury radiating off him. They triggered it. Dr. Hargrove didn't respond directly, but his expression said enough. Sedate her, he ordered. Lower neural stimulation immediately. Medication flowed into her fourth. The spikes slowed, but didn't fully stop. Lena felt terror, unlike anything she had ever known. This is because we confronted them, she whispered. Ethan didn't deny it. Outside the room, his phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, he stepped into the hallway and checked the screen. Unknown number. Encrypted routing. He answered without greeting. Dr. Victor Hale's voice came through, calm, almost curious. You should be observing adaptive resilience in real time. Ethan's grip tightened. You activated it. Activated is an aggressive term, Hale replied smoothly. We adjusted environmental thresholds. You're destabilizing children. We're proving our model works. Ethan's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. If she dies. She won't, Hale interrupted. The protocol prevents catastrophic failure. You're gambling with her heart. She's recalibrating. Ethan stepped further down the corridor, away from the ICU doors. Shut it down. Impossible. Do it. The sequence is self-executing once triggered, Hale said. You can't remove progress. Ethan's voice became lethal. You forget something. And, what's that? You built this with my capital. A pause. You don't control it, Hale replied calmly. No, Ethan said, but I control the infrastructure it runs on. Another pause. For the first time, Hale sounded less certain. What are you implying? Ethan ended the call without answering. Inside the ICU, Sophia's vitals were stabilizing under heavy sedation, but her stress markers remained elevated. It's like her body is being forced to perform, Dr. Hargrove muttered. Lena looked up sharply. Perform? Yes. The fragment enhances adaptive output under perceived threat. It's reading confrontation as stress. And responding how? She asked. By pushing her systems beyond baseline, Lena felt rage bloom beneath her fear. They turned survival into a competition. Ethan re-entered the room. They can't shut it down remotely, he said. It's embedded. Dr. Hargrove nodded grimly. We'll need to interrupt the signaling pathway. How? Lena demanded. By isolating the neural trigger. That sounds risky, Ethan said. It is. Silence settled heavily. What are the odds? Lena asked quietly. Dr. Hargrove hesitated. 60%. Not reassuring, but not hopeless. Lena leaned over her daughter. You don't have to win, she whispered softly. You just have to rest. Ethan stepped beside her. Teams win, he said gently. Lena glanced at him. Not by burning out. He understood immediately. Winning wasn't about outperforming. It was about surviving. Meanwhile, across the city, Novagen's secure servers flickered. Ethan had made one call, not to the press, not to lawyers, but to the cybersecurity division of Ashford Technologies. Emergency override, he ordered. You're not authorized for system penetration, his chief warned. I am the system. Within minutes, Ashford's infrastructure began pulling Novagen's back-end cloud dependencies offline. Not publicly, quietly, one server at a time. Victor Hale watched his monitoring dashboard dim in sections. What are they doing? One of his engineers asked nervously. Hale's jaw tightened. He's applying pressure. Should we disengage the pediatric cohort? Hale hesitated. If he did, it would prove vulnerability. If he didn't, it would prove cruelty. Hold position, he ordered, but doubt had entered the room. Back in the ICU, the medical team prepared for neural interruption therapy, a precision-targeted electromagnetic dampening procedure designed to suppress the fragment's activation loop. Lena signed the consent form with shaking hands. This time she read every word, every clause, every risk. Ethan placed his hand over hers briefly before she returned the pen. We fix it, he said quietly. She nodded. We fix it. Sophia was moved into the procedure suite again. The hallway felt too familiar now, too cold. Camila Alvarez stood waiting nearby. How is she? Camila asked. Fighting, Lena answered. Mateo, too. Their eyes met. Shared fury, shared fear, shared resolve. This wasn't just one child anymore. It was many. Inside the procedure room, specialists positioned equipment carefully around Sophia's small body. Electromagnetic arrays aligned to her neural mapping. Dr. Hargrove monitored the real-time genetic signaling interface. There, he said sharply. Fragment spike detected. The screen showed a glowing cluster along her stress processing cortex. Initiate dampening. A low hum filled the room. Sophia's heart rate climbed, then hesitated, flatlined for half a second. Lena gasped. Steady, Dr. Hargrove ordered. The hum intensified slightly. The glowing cluster flickered, fought, then dimmed. The heart monitor resumed rhythm, strong, even. The EEG spike softened, normalized. Silence fell over the surgical team. Sequence suppressed, a technician confirmed. Dr. Hargrove exhaled slowly. Maintain observation. 2 hours later, Sophia was back in recovery, breathing evenly. No abnormal spikes, no arrhythmia, just sleep, real sleep. Lena touched her cheek gently. She's resting, she whispered. Ethan stood beside her, exhaustion etched into his features. They won't try again, he said. Lena looked at him. How can you be sure? Because Novagen's valuation just collapsed. She blinked. What? I pulled infrastructure support. Regulatory agencies received documentation this morning. and the board forced Hale into containment review. Containment? House arrest. Pending investigation. Lena let out a slow breath. You moved fast. I moved necessary. She studied him quietly. You would have burned everything down. Yes. There was no hesitation, no performance, just truth. Sophia stirred softly. Her eyes fluttered open. Mommy, I'm here. Daddy, right here. She looked between them. You look tired. Lena smiled faintly. So do you. Sophia frowned slightly. I had a weird dream. Like something was pulling me. Ethan exchanged a glance with Lena. It's gone now, Lena said softly. Sophia considered that. Good. I don't like being pulled. Ethan brushed her hair back gently. No one pulls you anywhere without your permission. Sophia smiled faintly. Teams win, she whispered. Lena leaned down and kissed her forehead. Yes, she said, but teams protect each other first. Outside the room, news alerts began flashing across every major network. Biotech startup under investigation for unauthorized pediatric gene manipulation. Ashford Tech pulls funding amid ethical scandal. Parents demand criminal charges. The storm had broken. But inside that quiet hospital room, for the first time since this began, the monitors were steady, and hope wasn't fragile anymore. It was guarded. Because this fight wasn't just about stopping a company. It was about redefining progress, about drawing a line between innovation and exploitation. And as Lena looked at Ethan across their daughter's bed, she realized something had shifted permanently. They had both tried to control the future. Now they were choosing to protect it. Together. But investigations have layers, and as federal agents began seizing Novagen's physical servers, they discovered something unexpected, a second adaptive protocol, unreleased, untested, codenamed Project Helios. And according to the access logs, it had already been activated. Continue. Project Helios was not in the investor brief. It was not in the pediatric cohort files. It was not even in the classified trial summary Ethan had forced Novagen to release. It existed in a hidden partition, encrypted under a separate architecture, and it was already running. Federal agents stood in Novagen's primary server room as technicians mirrored drives and extracted data clusters. Found something, one analyst called out. A dark interface loaded on the central screen. Minimal branding. No corporate identifiers. Just a solar emblem rotating slowly. Project Helios. Status. Active. Deployment tier. Distributed. Distributed where? The agent asked. The analyst's face paled. Not in the hospital. He zoomed out. Nodes appeared across a digital map. Not just Manhattan. Boston. Chicago. San Francisco. International points lighting up one by one. This isn't pediatric, the analyst whispered. It's scalable. Back at Manhattan Children's Medical Center, Ethan's phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't an unknown number. It was the head of federal cybercrime. You need to come in, she said without preamble. Now, Lena watched his expression shift. What is it? He ended the call slowly. It's bigger. How much bigger? He met her eyes. Not just trial participants. A cold silence settled between them. Sophia slept peacefully, unaware that somewhere beyond the walls of her recovery room, something far more expansive had been set into motion. 3 hours later, Ethan stood inside a secured federal operations room. Screens covered the walls. Helios architecture filled them. Unlike the pediatric fragment, Helios wasn't attached to a single genome modification. It was modular, adaptive, cloud integrated. What am I looking at? Ethan demanded. The lead analyst turned. Behavioral optimization protocol. He didn't blink. Define. Helios connects biometric wearables, stress tracking apps, productivity platforms, educational performance systems. Ethan went still. They didn't implant it. No, they licensed it. The analyst nodded grimly. It's software, not embedded in DNA, embedded in daily life. Smartwatches, health trackers, corporate wellness programs, school performance analytics. Helios monitored stress, sleep, cognitive output, and subtly adjusted digital environments in response. Content feeds, notifications, workload pacing, even lighting recommendations through smart home integrations. It nudges performance thresholds, the analyst explained. When stress drops too low, it introduces stimuli. To push output, Ethan finished. Yes, Ethan felt something colder than rage. This wasn't rogue biotech. This was psychological infrastructure. How many users? He asked. The analyst hesitated. Preliminary estimate? 2.3 million. Ethan's jaw tightened. And growing. Across the city, Lena sat beside Sophia's bed while news coverage escalated. But something else caught her attention. A subtle vibration on her own smartwatch. She glanced at it absent-mindedly. She frowned. She hadn't opened any wellness app. Another notification followed. Her pulse slowed deliberately. She powered the watch off, then turned it back on. The notification reappeared. Persistent, adaptive, watching. Her breath caught. Not Sophia, not just children. Everyone. Ethan returned to the hospital that evening with a gravity Lena recognized immediately. It's behavioral, he said quietly once they were alone. Genetic? No. Then what? He held up his phone. A Helios interface blinked faintly under system diagnostics. They turned optimization into a lifestyle. Lena stared at him. How? Corporate partnerships, wellness incentives, insurance discounts for stress compliance, academic pilot programs. Her mind raced. Mateo's school sent home a focus enhancement app last semester. Ethan's eyes darkened. It's all connected. She looked down at Sophia. They're still pulling. Yes, but not from her body. From everyone's. Meanwhile, inside a private holding suite monitored by federal agents, Victor Hale watched the chaos unfold across news channels. He did not look defeated. He looked patient. An attorney sat across from him. They've frozen your primary accounts, she said. Temporary. They're calling this mass behavioral manipulation. He smiled faintly. They call innovation manipulation when they don't control it. You hid Helios. I protected it. From oversight. From stagnation. She studied him carefully. You activated it before they could shut Novagen down. Yes. Why? Because the world doesn't regress once it tastes optimization. Back in the ICU, Sophia stirred awake again. Mom? She murmured. I'm here. Sophia blinked slowly. I feel quieter. Lena smiled softly. That's good. Like my brain isn't racing. Lena swallowed emotion. That's very good. Sophia tilted her head. Did I win? Lena brushed her hair back. You didn't have to. Sophia considered that. That's better. Ethan stepped closer. You just had to be you. She smiled sleepily. Teams protect. Yes, he said gently. They do. The next morning, federal regulators issued an emergency injunction against Helios. But shutting it down wasn't simple. It wasn't one server. It wasn't one implant. It was integrated into third-party systems, corporate contracts, education platforms, insurance algorithms. If they pulled it too abruptly, entire digital infrastructures would glitch. Financial models relied on it. Productivity metrics used it. Even hospital staffing schedules had adopted its optimization analytics. It's everywhere, one regulator admitted in a closed meeting. Like sunlight, another muttered. Helios. Ethan sat across from a federal ethics committee that afternoon. You helped fund the early architecture, the chairwoman said evenly. Yes. Did you know it would scale beyond medical application? No. Would you have approved it if you had? He didn't hesitate. No. She studied him carefully. Then help us dismantle it. That night, Lena walked to the hospital window overlooking the city. Lights glittered across Manhattan. Millions of people moving, working, striving. How many of them were being nudged, encouraged to push harder, sleep less, produce more, win faster? She felt her phone vibrate again. Even powered down, it briefly flashed as it rebooted from a forced update. Her stomach turned. It wasn't just active. It was evolving. In a secure federal lab, analysts traced Helios's core directive. Unlike the pediatric fragment, which enhanced biological stress response, Helios optimized behavioral thresholds. Its mission statement, buried deep in the code, read, maximize human output without perceived coercion. One analyst leaned back slowly. They didn't just build software. They built invisible pressure, Back in Sophia's room, the monitors remained steady, peaceful, unaffected. For now, but Lena felt something larger pressing at the edges of everything. Novagen had been a visible villain, a biotech company, a CEO, a trial. Helios was different. It didn't look like harm. It looked like help, wellness, motivation, achievement. It didn't force. It suggested. And suggestions are harder to fight. Ethan joined her at the window. "They're trying to isolate the root servers," he said quietly. "Will it work?" "Yes, but..." He looked at the skyline. It already changed behavior patterns. Even if we shut it down, people are conditioned now. To what? To believe exhaustion is improvement. Silence lingered. "Then we change that," Lena said softly. He looked at her. "How?" "We tell the truth." He studied her face, the same woman who once built her own empire from nothing. Strategic, fearless, unyielding. "We take it public," she continued. "Not just the scandal, the philosophy." Ethan's expression shifted. "You want a war?" "No," Lena said quietly. "I want a boundary." Across the country, Helios dashboards flickered as federal cyber teams attempted segmentation. Some nodes went dark, others rerouted. Self-healing, adaptive. The system was learning resistance patterns. Project Helios was not just code, it was predictive, anticipatory, designed to survive shutdown attempts. And buried deep within its architecture, a secondary protocol began initializing. Contingency trigger. If central suppression detected, shift to decentralized mesh execution. Status. Engaging. Inside the hospital room, Sophia slept peacefully. Her heart steady, her breathing calm. But somewhere beyond the walls, in offices, in classrooms, in homes, millions of subtle nudges continued firing. Notifications, productivity suggestions, stress alerts, encouragement to push just a little harder. Helios wasn't a villain you could arrest. It was an idea embedded in infrastructure. And as Ethan's secure phone lit up again with a single line alert, he felt the next wave forming. He closed his eyes briefly. "It just went underground," he said. Lena didn't look away from the skyline. "Then we follow it, because sometimes the most dangerous systems aren't the ones that change your DNA. They're the ones that convince you you're not enough, unless you're constantly improving." And Project Helios was just getting started. 3 months later, Sophia was home. The hospital monitors were gone. The IV scars had faded. And for the first time in a long time, her laughter filled the apartment without being followed by a medical alert. She was drawing at the kitchen table when Lena glanced at her smartwatch. Blank. No nudges, no resilience prompts, no productivity warnings. Helios had been legally dismantled at the corporate level. The central servers were seized. Executives faced criminal investigations. Victor Hale awaited trial. But fragments of the system still surfaced occasionally, ghost code embedded in third-party apps. The difference now? People knew, and knowledge disrupted control. Ethan stood before a Senate subcommittee on digital ethics. "You funded optimization technology," one senator said sharply. "Why should the public trust you now?" He didn't deflect. "They shouldn't," he answered calmly. "They should trust transparency, regulation, boundaries. You helped build it." "Yes, and now I'm dismantling the idea that human worth equals output." The room fell quiet, because that was the real argument. Not biotech, not software, philosophy. Lena launched something different, not a company, a foundation. Its mission was simple. Human value is not performance-based. Schools adopted new digital wellness policies. Corporate boards revised productivity tracking systems. Insurance companies were barred from behavioral stress scoring without consent. Cultural shifts began slowly, but they began. One evening, Lena found Sophia staring out at the skyline. "What are you thinking about?" Lena asked softly. Sophia tilted her head. "I don't feel pulled anymore." Lena's throat tightened. "That's good." Sophia nodded. "I just feel like me." Ethan joined them at the window. "Good," he said gently. "That's exactly who you're supposed to be." Sophia looked up at both of them. "Did we win?" Lena and Ethan exchanged a glance. "Not the old kind. Not strategic, not guarded. Honest. We drew a line, Lena said. And held it, Ethan added. Sophia seemed satisfied with that. She ran off toward her room, chasing something imaginary and joyful and entirely unoptimized. Later that night, as the city glowed beneath them, Ethan spoke quietly. There will always be another Helios. Lena nodded. Yes. Another version, smarter, quieter. Yes. He looked at her. So what do we do? She didn't hesitate. We teach Sophia the difference between growth and pressure. He exhaled slowly. And if the world forgets again? She reached for his hand. Then we reminded. Across the country, remnants of Helios code flickered occasionally in forgotten servers. But without secrecy, without silent adoption, without blind trust, it had lost its power. Because optimization thrives in invisibility. It weakens under scrutiny. The final federal report would later conclude. Project Helios demonstrated that the most dangerous systems are not those that control bodies, but those that redefine self-worth. But in one Manhattan apartment, no one was reading reports. Sophia was asleep, peaceful, unenhanced, unmonitored, her heart beating in its own rhythm. And for the first time since the fluorescent lights of a hospital room shattered everything, Lena no longer felt the need to engineer the future. She simply held it, protected it, allowed it to breathe. Because sometimes progress is not about pushing humanity forward. Sometimes it's about knowing when to stop. And in a world addicted to improvement, choosing enough was the most radical act of all.